Hi.
Hi, how are
How
you?
are you? Good. Thank you so
It's
much
good
for
to meet you.
you too. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I have the run of show on my computer and I'm doing
Okay,
this
great.
through my phone. So let me just,
Amazing.
okay. Well, I
Okay.
can't, okay.
I'm just getting myself out of all of this. Only thing, okay. Oh, so you're good because last time we had it's so many issues getting the other panelists to be able to be a host with me, but this seems like we're good.
Yay, amazing. So you're in New York?
I'm in New York, yeah.
Okay, you sound, or how, can I ask how old you are?
29, but I know I look
Okay.
younger.
No, I'm 32 and I grew up in New York City and
Oh,
you just like
wow.
remind me. So like, where'd you go to school? Did you grow up in New York?
I grew up on Long Island, so
And
known
I
as New
went to
York
camp.
City.
I went to Bryn Mawr. Have you heard of Bryn Mawr?
No, where is that?
Okay. It's in the Poconos. It's a camp.
Oh,
And I went with a bunch of Long Island girls, but my best friend is from Long Island too. She's from what's it called? Not Forest Hills, Farmingdale.
oh, so I'm from Great Neck, so
Great
not
Neck.
too far. All on the LIE.
All on
But
the LIE. Oh, I love your voice. It makes me so happy.
where did you grow up in the city?
I grew up in Manhattan. I went to Horace Mann for like
Oh,
until I
nice.
was 6, and then I moved to Princeton, New Jersey, and
Oh,
like
nice.
got away from all that craziness, thank God. But
Yeah.
I
It is
live in
crazy.
Colorado now. It's
I
crazy.
know, that's amazing. I'm very jealous of you. I was telling my sister-in-law actually, we like grew up going to Aspen and Vail all the time, and I
Yeah.
saw you live not far from there. I'm like, it's so nice. I wish I could
I
be
live right,
there.
I'm in Aspen right now actually doing this
Uh,
call, but
so
we live
nice.
just outside. It's pretty amazing. I'll be honest.
So
It's
nice.
pretty
It's
cool.
like a
So
dream.
what made you start, you must have kids, I
I
imagine.
do. I have a son and I'm actually expecting number two in the beginning of June. So I apologize if I look really tired.
No, you don't. I can
Um,
barely, you're actually really tiny. I can't see you hardly at all. So
Yeah.
on my
So
side.
yeah, everyone says like this. You can't tell I'm pregnant looking
Yes,
at my face, so that's
not
good.
even close.
Um, so what made me start? So I've always really just been like extremely passionate about community. All of my like community nutrition in general. I think that's what really like brought me to be. It's you'll see it. It's in my slides, but it's kind of what brought me to become a dietitian in the first place. And then so I started Fair Meals like a year ago, really when the pandemic started. Not actually as a nonprofit, just kind of just as a platform, seeing where it would go, and then ultimately, I've done so much work in the nonprofit space, and I just felt like it was the way for me to go.
Yeah,
Um, and I
totally.
just like it's a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie, it's a
Yeah.
ton of work, but I think it's just really ultimately where I want to be.
Yeah.
So it's been like really great. Like
That's
it's been
amazing.
great. It's
Yeah.
um, a lot of building from the ground up,
Yep.
but it's okay.
Yeah, but you're doing amazing.
Thank you.
I love what you're doing. I'm pulling up just 1 second. I'm just pulling up
Yeah, no
Amanda's
trouble.
email. Hold
No,
on.
this is okay. I'm gonna wait for a few more people to join,
Okay.
and then we will begin.
Are they in? Are you waiting to let them in?
No,
They're
just
here?
yeah, people are
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, everyone.
So we'll get started in a minute or two, and then we will begin. Okay, I am going to start because I like to start on time.
Awesome. I love it.
So I'm going to start speaking. I just want to welcome everyone, kind of give a little bit of background to who we are, who I am, tonight's agenda, and then I will pass on over to our moderator for tonight, Laura Max Rose. And thank you for joining us, Laura Max.
Thank you for
Laura,
having me.
sorry.
It's okay. I'll be Laura Max.
So for everyone who's here, thanks for joining. For those of you who were at last month's webinar, thanks for coming back. I definitely saw some repeat registration, so I appreciate you being here. And for those of you who are new, because we definitely had a bunch of new registrations, thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you at future webinars, and we'll obviously keep you up to date with that as well. So tonight's webinar is about kids in the kitchen and how to safely make healthy meals and snacks. And I'm obviously going to touch upon my philosophy behind this, why I think this is important, both creatively and obviously as a registered dietitian, I'm going to focus mostly on why nutritionally it's important for our kids as well. Majority of the webinar is also going to be talking about specific recipes for snacks and meals that kids can partake in, and my approach on how they should be involved. And the reason I'm doing this is because I speak to so many parents and so many families who say that well, what can they participate in? What types of recipes? So I want to answer all those questions tonight. So I will. So yeah, that's really what tonight's webinar is about, and a little bit about Fair Meals. So we are currently a new nonprofit with our 501c3 status currently pending. Fair Meals is a free online platform offering families healthy, simple, and affordable meal solutions. So we have a ton of nutrition educational programming on our website and different we have some nutrition education materials on our website. We have a ton of programming, such as these webinars, and we hope to build upon that in the future as well. Our mission is to empower families with the nutrition education, step-by-step recipes, and budget planning to make meals healthy, easy, and affordable. And our vision is to combat America's chronic disease crisis by making healthy food an option for every family. Unfortunately, we're seeing such a large uptick in chronic diseases at such a young age. We're seeing, and a lot of that has to do with, unfortunately, childhood obesity that we're seeing so much of. So we're seeing an increase in type 2 diabetes in children. We're seeing an increase in hypertension. So being able to empower families and let families know that healthy food is an option for them can hopefully help combat this unfortunate crisis that we're seeing. A little bit about me. So I founded Fair Meals to offer nutritional guidance and easy recipes that empower families to eat well on a budget. I've really always had a passion for community, which is what inspired me really to become a registered dietitian and to really launch Fair Meals as this practical and educational resource. I have a Master's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics from NYU, and I'm a recognized registered dietitian. So what that means is I did all the necessary coursework. I completed about a 10-month dietetic internship and passed a board certified exam to become what we call the food expert that I either am or am not, but I guess objectively speaking, I am. And a little bit about my family. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I know how difficult it can be to provide healthy meals for my family that are convenient and affordable and obviously don't take a long time. I know when this pandemic hit, so many families were stuck with, all their kids at home and all the caregivers at home. And the last thing people wanted to do was spend a lot of time in the kitchen, but they also wanted to prepare healthy meals for their family. So with this resource, I really hope to be able to help families from all walks of life. Okay, a little bit about our moderator, Laura. So She has a hit podcast, Look Ma No Hands, which I've actually listened to a few episodes of and is great. So I
Yay, thank
highly,
you.
highly recommend. It features her candid dispatches from front lines of motherhood and in-depth interviews with experts in the fields of parenting and mental health and motherhood in general. She is the mom to two girls, Selma and Violet, and she just moved actually to Colorado, sounds awesome, with
Cool.
her two girls, her husband, and their dog Hampton. So I'm just going to go through quickly tonight's agenda, and then I will pass over to Laura to moderate tonight's event. So today's agenda. So why should kids be in the kitchen? And I'm going to go through my philosophy. A lot of this is my philosophy based on some work that I've done with kids, as well as some personal things I've seen with my own child. Review safe ways to involve kids in the kitchen, discuss healthy snack and meal options, and this is going to be the majority of the webinar tonight, and then consider whether options are tangible for you and your family. And of course, we'll end with a Q&A, and Laura's going to go over this as well, but please feel free to put in messages whenever you want. And if something is very applicable to what we're speaking about at the moment, and we have time and time allows for it, then we will consider talking about it at that time as well. So without further ado, I give you Laura.
Hi, everyone. Ariel, thank you so much for having me today. I'm honored to be able to guide you all through this webinar. Having two children of my own, I can say that kids in the kitchen in general has been a very fun at times and sometimes just very challenging challenge. But I am really glad to just bring more information about how we can keep our kids safe and having fun in the kitchen. So if you all would like to take this poll that's now on your screen, you can check the boxes to answer the questions. And once we have your answers, we will give you a little explanation based off of the results. So go ahead and fill this out. I believe there's only 2 questions here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all about how safe you feel in the kitchen with your little ones. I guess I'll participate too.
Please. You have kids.
Right? I'm taking it myself. Let's see.
Okay. So we can
All right. Go
Ooh,
ahead.
sorry.
No, I was going to see if everybody has submitted their, but you can probably see that actually.
So we have majority of our participants actually do not have their kids take part of the cooking process. And
That's why you're here.
That's why we're here. Exactly. I'm actually happy to see that.
So why don't you tell us, Ariel, why our kids should be in the kitchen? And I mean, I know when I was just looking at that questionnaire, the last answer to the first question is all of the above. But as I was going through before I saw that, I was a little bit hesitant to choose, using a knife, for example. But I imagine the answer that you wanted everyone to choose was probably all of the above, because I know I've seen some kid-safe knives out there on Amazon. Of course, I've been a little bit too worried to use them. So tell us, in an ideal world, how can we really include our children in the kitchen?
Okay, so I will first talk about why kids should be in the kitchen, and then the next slide, or in a few slides, we'll get to that first question of what are some safe ways to involve kids in the kitchen. But first, I'm going to go through, again, nutritionally, creatively, why I believe kids should be in the kitchen and why really objectively they should be in the kitchen. So first and foremost, it sparks interest in new foods. And I think that is what every parent wants. And when I say sparks interest in new foods, it doesn't necessarily need to be that they're going to eat these foods and all of a sudden fall in love with it. But it's about getting them to try these foods. And that is all we want as parents, to get our kids to try new foods. So a little bit of a story where I saw this, one of the first times I saw this firsthand is a few years back. I taught 4-year-olds a cooking class, but the caveat to that was that it was a plant-based cooking class. So we didn't we couldn't use anything that did not fall under the category of plant-based. So this was a little tricky, and at times it was very frustrating to become creative in coming up with some recipes that I think they'd be interested in, obviously partaking in the preparation process as well as eating. And one day we made, I don't remember, it was salsa, but it was something tomato based. And the mom came to me after and said, let alone having my child eat a tomato, how did you get him to touch a tomato? And I said, she's like, he gets grossed out by tomatoes. And I said, well, do you involve him at all in cooking at home? And she says, no, I mean, I typically do meal preparation when he's out at school. So I said, well, there was obviously some interest in the tomato because he was a part of this process. He was a part of the preparation process, and she was so excited about that. And again, I'm not saying this is like the holy grail of getting your kids to try new foods, but it definitely does spark some interest in them. So I definitely recommend that. It also provides a sense of comfortability in the kitchen, and that's super important. I'm going to be really honest. I did not spend much time as a child in the kitchen. And when I kind of went out on my own, I didn't feel so comfortable. So getting them in there at an early age will provide them with that comfortability. And that's super important for when they do ultimately leave your homes, which does happen, even though it may seem like a really long time away. I know for me it does, but I've been told that it's happens a lot faster than we think. So, so it's definitely a good idea. It also fosters a healthy relationship with food, and this is really important. I've worked with a ton of adolescents who have unfortunately really unhealthy relationships with food, and I find that kids who have told, or adolescents rather, who have told me that they have been involved in preparing meals with their caregivers, actually do have a little bit of a healthier relationship with food. And ultimately, as parents, and caregivers, that's really what we want for our children. We want them to have a healthy relationship with food, because it is really sad to see them suffer with that relationship, with a poor relationship. It's also a great opportunity to reduce screen time. I know during this pandemic, screen time has been on overload. It definitely has been in my house. So any opportunity to get them away from the screens and get them engaged in something and excited about something, why not? It also increases independence and healthy eating habits. So both of those 2 points go back to providing that sense of comfortability, as well as fostering healthy relationships. So when your kids do ultimately leave home, they do feel independent. They feel like they can do something on their own. And even before they leave home, even as they get older, they do feel like they can be in the kitchen and, take charge. And kids love that feeling of independence. And as parents, again, that's something that we want for our kids. And then from like an occupational therapy standpoint, it really does help strengthen fine motor skills. There's a ton of, and I'm going to go through, when I go through all of the recipes later on, you're going to see that a lot of the techniques and a lot of the actions that they can help with really do help strengthen these fine motor skills.
So now you can move on, Ariel, to the question that I should have asked you second.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. That was that.
Which is how do they, although there are those knives. Okay.
Yeah, I'll show them to you.
How, I think this is the most intimidating part of the whole process, right? Is like how, and you were talking about how you weren't really in the kitchen as a child, which is actually very inspiring to me because I wasn't either. So there is hope for us who were not raised this way.
Yes.
That we can start afresh with our own children. So tell us how.
Exactly. So there are a lot of ways that we can, involve our children in the kitchen. And obviously, you'll see on this slide, it's obviously based on your comfort level as a parent, even though it is important to come out of your comfort level a little bit at times, but based on obviously age and ability and what's appropriate for that child at that time. So I see in the poll that most of you did answer all of the above, but we have a lot of people that did mixing and a lot of people that did spreading and decorating. Not many people did knife skills, but I will go through all of that as well. So So safe ways to involve kids in the kitchen. So we follow the 4 A's. So there are the actions that they can do. So there's scooping, there's mixing, pouring, mashing, spreading, decorating, tasting. We also want to ask questions. That's involving them too. We want them to describe and identify ingredients to us. When they're looking at an ingredient, we want to ask them, what does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it look like? We want to get their imagination kind of flowing a little bit. So asking them questions about these ingredients is a really great way to involve them, especially as they get a little bit older and they are able to communicate themselves a little bit more. And also ask about likes and dislikes. So many times, kids say, I don't like this or I like this, and ask them why. Why do you like this? Why do you not like this? And that may, be enough to spark a little bit of an interest to a kid who may think they don't like something, but they may actually like it. So definitely those are other ways to get them involved. Obviously, they can assist and aid in things that may be a little bit more complex. Again, obviously, depending on ability and age. So measure ingredients, prep cookware. And then also I'm going to include in there knife skills. We do want to teach our kids to use knives. It is very scary, but of course, again, maybe going a little bit out of your comfort level as a caregiver, it's important to teach them those skills as well when you feel they are ready. And that's why it's important to get them in at a young age so that at some point they will be ready to go out and for you to watch them and have them learn these knife skills. And also just obviously acknowledge differences as a caregiver. That's important. Remember, all children are different, have different abilities, have different interests. And just have fun with the process and make room for growth. We don't want to bring them into this process and this to be overwhelming for them. We want them to be engaged the whole time. So don't give them too much to do at once or too much that's, over their heads, especially when they are young. So give them really simple tasks, things that they will learn from and things that they can engage in, but that's not too much for them to partake in. So the answer to that poll was that yes, it's all of the above. They can partake in all of the above, again, at an appropriate time. And these were the knives I was talking about. I know I skipped forward for a little bit, but these are actually not sharp at all. I taught, like I mentioned, I taught a cooking class, and we use these knives with 4 and 5-year-olds, and they were great, and the kids loved them. And I do recommend getting them. You can get them on Amazon. I do recommend getting them because your kids, first of all, you can always say like, these are, mommy and daddy's knives and these are your knives. And they can still feel like they're a part of something. And they cut through, not everything, but they cut through, we're going to go, like I said, we're going to go through some recipes, and they cut through a lot of the ingredients that we're going to be talking about. They do cut through those. So they're great. They're a great set to have at home. I definitely would recommend getting them if you're interested, of course.
I have them and they're actually really wonderful.
Oh,
there's
awesome.
there's no reason to be afraid of them if you're on the fence. They won't cut anything, like they're not going to cut a finger, but they will cut, something in the kitchen, which is great.
Yeah, no, they are great. So what I actually see somebody wrote a message. What brand are the knives? I actually don't remember the brands of the knives, but I can get back to everyone, and I do send out a newsletter afterwards, so I can write the brands of the knives in there and put a little link in.
If you go on Amazon and just look up kids plastic knives, like the ones on the left are going to be the first ones that come up. So yeah, they're all pretty much the same too.
But they're great, and I definitely highly recommend them. And my 2-year-old uses them, so anyone can use them. Okay, so now we're going to get to the portion of tonight's webinar where I talk to you specifically about some recipes that I think are really appropriate for really all ages, and I'll talk to you specifically about what actions are appropriate for younger, older. And obviously you as caregivers should allow anything at your discretions, but I just want to go through these and the other thing that I'm going to do is we will talk about things to consider, which you'll see on the right side of the slide. This is on every slide, so I'm going to go through it for the first 1 or 2 recipes, but then it's going to get a little bit repetitive. So I will not continue to go through that for every recipe, but we obviously will talk about it for the first one or two. So nut butter and banana sandwich. So I love this, and some of these may seem so simple, but that's what we want. That's how we want to eventually, that's how we want to bring our kids into the kitchen and start them off. So I love this recipe because spreading is such a great action for kids to learn from a young age. And nut butter is typically a little bit easier to spread on a piece of bread than, let's say butter or cream cheese or some of those other spreads or jelly or anything of that sort. And you can do that with, those kid knives that I just showed you on the last slide. You can do this with a spoon. If you really are nice and you want your kids to get messy, they can do it with their hands. But I think spreading is a really great action and a great skill for them to learn. And nut butter is a great way to do that. So just a little bit about this recipe. It's simple and delicious. It's low cost. We're using really bread, nut butter, and banana. You can really use any fruit you want. And then healthy source of fats and protein. So obviously we're getting that from the peanut butter, a serving of whole grains, because always use whole grain if you can. And no added sugar. That's if you're using a natural peanut butter, which I obviously will always advocate for. But if your kid is not interested in the no added sugar, I will not tell you to stay away from the brands that you're buying now that do have sugar, because the benefits of getting those healthy fats and protein, and it's a great protein for kids to like. Obviously, not if your child has a nut or a peanut allergy, a tree nut or peanut allergy, but if they don't, it's a great source of protein for them to like. So I definitely will tell you that those benefits are going to be much greater than the risk of having a little bit of sugar in there. The recipe is pretty simple. It's a whole grain bread, sliced banana, nut butter, and there's a lot of things to do at this age. Obviously older kids can actually probably make most of this themselves. Younger kids can get into the spreading, into that spreading technique. They can also slice bananas again with those knives. They can use a plastic knife. They can even do it with a spoon. They can even break the bananas apart with their hands and put them on the sandwich. So there's a lot to do for a lot of different ages with this recipe, and that's something that I really like. And some things to consider. So is this a meal my child would enjoy? Are these ingredients familiar to my child? So we don't want to only get them involved in recipes that use ingredients that they love, that all of the ingredients that they love, because obviously, yes, that's going to be interesting for them. But if part of the plan is to get them to pique their interest, then even having one ingredient that excites them should be enough to get them involved in that cooking process, and should actually get them interested in trying the new foods. So in that new foods that they're making, in that recipe rather. So don't think it needs to be all of the ingredients that they love, because it doesn't need to be. One ingredient should definitely be enough. So which actions are safe for my child to partake in? And that's again at your discretion, but let's try to go out of our comfort zone a little bit. Is my child capable of making this meal with assistance? And is my child capable of making this meal alone? And this may be, even if it's one of their first times in the kitchen, they really may be capable of making this meal alone for the most part, obviously with your supervision. But think about their ability. Are they able to do this? And let them kind of take charge, because I'm telling you, they're going to enjoy it. Okay, one second. Okay, our next thing is yogurt parfait. So I love this recipe too, or rather this, I would call it a meal or a snack, because again, there are so many different ways that kids of different ages and abilities can help and partake in. So it's simple and delicious. It's low cost, super easy to prepare. We get a complete source of protein in the yogurt. We get a source of probiotics in the yogurt, which is always a win. And lower sugar, obviously, if we're using plain yogurt. So this recipe does call for Greek yogurt or plain yogurt, which has no added sugar in it. If your kid really wants a flavor, that's fine too. Always try to get something with lower in sugar, and add things like fruit and cinnamon and things to kind of give it a little bit more flavor. But again, do whatever your child will likely eat and enjoy. So some fresh berries and granola. So granola I made as optional because this can be a choking hazard, obviously, depending on your child's age, on their ability to swallow and everything of that sort. So that should be at your own discretion. But this is a really fun recipe. You know, older kids, again, can really take charge and make this whole recipe themselves. And younger kids can, you know, help pick out the berries. They can pick out what fruit they want to put on it. Like even them making the decision is part of them being in this process. We don't, you know, not everything has to be so messy, but having them be like, oh, well, what fruit should we put on your yogurt today or in this yogurt parfait? Having them and show them, you know, 3 different options. Having them make that decision is a part of involving them. So, you know, they can do things like that. And like I said, older kids can obviously probably do most of this themselves. They can even make some granola themselves with some oats and some nuts and some honey and, you know, make it themselves. It's a really fun, it's a really easy recipe. And, you know, we're getting a lot of great benefits from that as well. And things to consider, same as the last slide. Is this something that they would enjoy? You know, maybe if they love berries, right? And they love cinnamon, let's say, but you know, they don't really love plain yogurt. Maybe try the plain yogurt. Maybe it'll get them to eat the plain yogurt, right? And something that's a little bit lower in sugar, which obviously is the best option. So you know, definitely I recommend trying to see how we can make this a little bit healthier, and maybe, you know, getting them involved can pique their interest in trying these new foods that they may say that they don't like at all. Okay. So ants on a log. And some of these recipes may seem super, super simple to you, but just remember, we don't want to go over our kids' head. We don't want things too crazy for them, because then they will be completely disengaged and run off. And I'm sure sometimes you see your kids get bored with toys, especially if they're a little bit too mature for them, like for their cognitive ability. So we want to make sure we're keeping things super simple. So I love this recipe also because it is really simple and delicious. It's fun and creative, and kids love using their creativity and their imaginations. There's a healthy source of fats and proteins. Again, in the peanut butter, we get a serving of fruit in the dried fruit, which is really, really high in fiber. And we get a serving of vegetables in the celery. Again, obviously, not all kids of all ages can eat celery. So just use your discretion as well. And I really love this recipe because of, again, you can do the spreading of the peanut butter. And this you really can do with a spoon or your hands. And you can have your younger kids do that. You can have your younger kids place, you know, the raisins or dried cranberries, whatever dried fruit you choose or they choose. You can have them do that. And it's aesthetically really pleasing. I mean, it's a really like cute and fun snack. And I think a lot of kids get really excited about eating this. I see this all the time on, you know, food Instagram pages, and it's been around for years. And there's a reason that it is, because I think kids just like things that look colorful and nice and kind of remind them of some other imagery that they may be familiar with. So definitely a great snack for, you know, older kids to, again, make on their own. Again, with supervision. And then same things to consider, you know, try to, you know, if they're not so into raisins or they're not so into dried cranberries, maybe use that, because the celery and the peanut butter enough is alone to get them interested in this process. Okay, 1 second. So veggies with hummus or guacamole. So you can make your own hummus and guacamole, which are really easy. And those obviously also then include tons of great opportunities to get your kids involved in the process. But the mere act of putting vegetables on a plate or helping to scoop the hummus or the guacamole out into a bowl or onto any serving dish is enough to get them involved. Like I mentioned, not everything needs to be like so, you know, full into the cooking or whatever or whatnot, but we can really just have them do such simple tasks. And again, that's what we want to do with our younger kids. We don't want them to feel disengaged at all. But again, guacamole is a great thing to make with young kids. I mean, they can mash avocado if you're daring with their hands. They can add in a bunch of different vegetables, a bunch of different spices. Guacamole is actually a great way to introduce spice and introduce flavor to your kids at a young age. A lot of the times we tell parents when their kids are infants to use avocado kind of as that vehicle to introduce like garlic powder and some other spices that, you know, we want our kids to get accustomed to as well. So it's simple and delicious, obviously super easy to prepare. You can choose any vegetables that you want or your kids want. It's also a great way for them to get them to try, you know, hummus or guacamole if they don't like it. It's a great way. If they do love hummus and guacamole, it's a great way for them to try new vegetables if you want them to. So it kind of works both ways. It's a healthy source of fats and protein. So hummus is a great source of fat and protein. Guacamole is a great source of fat and actually fiber. It's nutrient dense and we get a serving of vegetables and it's a win-win for everyone. And obviously the recipe can completely vary depending on, you know, what you're interested in, what your kids are interested, so on and so forth. So again, this is, you know, I'm not going to go through the things to consider. It's the same thing as before, but let's try to come up with a way to get our kids to try something new here, right? We want them we want a new, either for them to try one of these dips or a new vegetable, depending what that ingredient is that they're going to say, hey, yeah, I love this, so I'm going to try it with, you know, X, Y, and Z. So DIY trail mix. So this obviously is going to be age dependent because we don't really recommend kids eat nuts until about the age of 5. As it is a choking hazard. So I definitely don't recommend, I mean, if your younger kids want to take part in helping to make this, that's great. But they should not be eating this until they're about 5 years old. So I would definitely recommend this to be, you know, for older kids. And this is also a great snack for older kids to do because they can completely do all of this on their own. And it's a great way to get them to try new things as well. You know, if they don't, you know, a lot of kids love nut butter, but they don't necessarily love nuts. And I think a big part of that is because they can't actually eat nuts until they're much older. So it may just be something that they're not familiar with and may not be as likely to try or want to try. So, you know, we're adding some chocolate in there. You can add some coconut flakes in there. You can add some seeds in there. It's a really great way to make a healthy, packed snack. So it's simple, it's delicious. We're really using all shelf-stable ingredients, which is great. We get a healthy source of fats from the nuts and the seeds. You know, it's lower in sugar. And it's nutrient dense. We're getting fiber from the dried fruit. We're getting, like I said, the healthy fats from the nuts and the seeds. So, and we're getting, you know, just a chocolate, which is delicious. Who doesn't love chocolate? So, and that can definitely be the driving force to getting your kids to want to try this. But it's also fun because they can completely do this on their own. There are really no actions that are considered unsafe. You know, obviously, except for your younger kids, maybe trying a nut. But for older kids, this is a great snack to do on their own. So now we have breakfast quesadillas. So I really like this for a few reasons as well. I think I'll go through the details of it. It's simple and delicious, shelf-stable ingredients for the most part, except for the fruit really, and the tortillas, depending on which ones you use. We get a healthy source of fat in the peanut butter. And again, lower in sugar, depending on what peanut butter you're using. So we need a tortilla, nut or seed butter, and bananas or strawberries or really any fruit. So I really like this for a few reasons. So younger kids, again, we can have them kind of do that, you know, the spreading action, which is a great skill for them to use. And then the cutting of the banana with the child safe knives or plastic knives or using their hands, whatever it is that you feel comfortable doing. I love this for older kids to actually work on their knife skills because cutting through a tortilla is a great thing for them to learn because it's not as soft as cutting through a banana, but it's pretty soft. And it's a great consistency for them to learn how to use a knife. Um, and they can do it with those child safe knives, or if you want to give them like a knife that you use to eat your dinner, like a cutlery knife. You can do that as well and kind of teach them that way because it will cut through the tortilla. Another great thing that it teaches kids is you definitely can eat this cold without warming it up. But it's a great way to get your kids to, if they do want to warm it up, to get them comfortable over the stove. You're not using any oil or anything. You really just want to heat up that tortilla. So just having them, put it on the stove just to heat it up a little bit and then flip it. Those are some great skills that we can teach our older kids. So I definitely recommend this recipe. Again, for all ages, there's different parts that are, appropriate for all different ages. But again, bringing them onto the stove, that as a parent can be really scary, but this is a great way to kind of introduce them without obviously oil, which can obviously be dangerous and I think scary as a parent. And also just that flipping, obviously with your help, just using a spatula and teaching them that skill as well. So I really like this recipe for that reason. Too. Does anyone have questions? I think, did I see any come through? No, do not. But anyone, feel free to ask questions if you want. But we'll also have some Q&A at the end. Okay, our next one is turkey roll-ups. And for the same reason as the quesadillas, I love the idea of, first of all, I think this is great because younger kids, again, they can layer all of the ingredients, and layering, and then kind of when you roll it up and cut it, they can see how beautiful it is. And it's aesthetically pleasing, I think, to a lot of kids, younger or older. So younger kids, again, they can spread, they can layer, and older kids, they can roll up, and then they can, again, practice those cutting skills because you are using a wrap or a tortilla, which again is cutting, is easy to cut through. So it's really, it's a great recipe to practice that skill on as well. And older kids can make this for the most part. It may not be as beautiful, but we don't really care about beautiful. We care about delicious, and we care about fun, and we care about getting those kids in the kitchen and getting them comfortable in there. So this is really fun. And this is also a really delicious meal. Side point, I make this a lot for myself for lunch. It's also a great, great lunch, allergen friendly lunch to send your kids to school with. I know a lot of people are making lunch nowadays with the pandemic. A lot of schools are not offering lunch. And this is super easy. You can make it the night before. You can easily make it that morning. And I recommend this a lot to parents who always ask me, I don't know what to make my kid. I'm so tired of making them lunch. And this is just something it's so versatile. You can put turkey in there. You can put cheese in there. You can put any sort of luncheon meat in there. You can put egg in there. There's so much that you can do with these roll-ups. So again, I went a little bit on a tangent, but I definitely wanted to make note that this is a really great lunch for your kids for school. But it's also great to get, kids of all ages involved in the cooking process. I saw some questions come in.
Let's see, we have, can you put all these ideas in your newsletter?
I can. Well,
I'm thinking the same thing.
This is being recorded, and it will be up on the website in a few weeks. So you will be able to see this again, but I can put a few of them. I can't say I can put all of them, but I can put a few of them.
And Alan is asking, do you think that kids of the age of 3 or 4 would be able to handle doing more than one of these recipes at a time? Or do you think I should just have my child do one at a time?
I would probably say do one at a time. Again, we want to keep them engaged, and we don't really want to have anybody feeling too frustrated in the process. And I think for adults, we don't want to really make more than one recipe at a time. So why have our kids do that too? I would definitely stick to one recipe. For sure.
An anonymous attendee asked about the lunch meats. Would you use different lunch meats in the tuna roll-ups? And you actually already said that you would use different types of lunch meat.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay, our next one, so tuna salad. So the reason I like to add tuna salad is because I find so many kids don't like tuna or canned salmon. or anything of that sort, but it's such a great protein for them to really like. I don't know, do your kids like tuna?
No, mine, you know what? I have to be honest, I haven't even introduced tuna to them, but
Oh wow.
I love it. So I should do that.
So it's a great way to, so my son actually loves tuna and salmon salad. And I think a huge part of that is because he loves the vegetables inside of it. And that's kind of what got him to try it. And now he just loves it.
That's amazing.
So I think it's a great way to get them to try. And that's why I put this recipe out there. And it's why when I talk to families or I talk to parents, I definitely do recommend these. I do recommend this recipe for them because they can pick whatever vegetables they want to put in there, and it's a great vehicle for them to kind of, put in whatever they want. And again, older kids can learn their chopping skills because we obviously want the vegetables to be cut small. The younger kids can get involved in the picking of the vegetables, putting it in and mixing it in with the tuna. I'm okay with using mayo. I know mayo is controversial. I'm completely
It
okay with
is?
that. Well, controversial.
I didn't know mayo was controversial.
It shouldn't be. There's nothing wrong with mayo,
I
but I
love
know,
mayo.
yes, I also do, and it's totally fine. But I know a lot of people like to stay away from it, and they think it's not a good food. Which again, I really don't like to label foods as good and bad. Going back to fostering healthy relationships with food. But you can put Greek yogurt in as a substitute. It definitely changes the flavor a little bit, but it's still a very interesting taste, and people really like it. And also avocado. And avocado is a really fun way again to get some of your younger kids involved, to mash it up and put it into the tuna. It definitely changes the color a little bit, but it's still really delicious and it makes it super creamy. But the mayo, but having them, get involved in all of those, actions are great. And I think it's a really, really great way to get your child to try tuna salad or salmon salad. So I highly recommend it. I know it seems super simple, but I've heard from parents how successful it can be, and saying, "Wow, my child tried it." And again, that's all we want our kids to do. We want them to try new foods. So let's just get them trying it. And if they're going to be able to put in whatever vegetables they want, then why not?
I think I've been repeatedly surprised by the foods that my kids actually will try after the ones that they just have no interest in. And I think one thing it took me two kids to figure out was that repeated exposures actually do work.
Oh
That
yeah, as
like, I mean,
frustrating as it is.
as frustrating as it is, I think there's something about, it was too frustrating for me with one, but maybe it's like that I know one of them will probably try it. I don't know, but I've been doing more repeated exposures that have really benefited my 4.5-year-old. And
It's
their
great.
taste buds change. Yeah, their interests change. And even if they try it that one time, they might just move on and like think that they don't like it, and then they'll be interested in trying it again next time. So
A hundred
um,
percent. That's
I mean,
great. It's great. I give you kudos for that because I know how frustrating it can be, to do repeated exposure, and it can take a child up to like 11 or 12 times to try a food to like it.
and it's
So
hard
we
to
kind of,
imagine.
yes, and it's
Yeah,
it's really frustrating as a
yeah.
as a caregiver. It's extremely frustrating, but it ultimately will pay off. And listen, some kids will have it 14 times and still not like it, until they're a little bit older, or they may never like it, and that's fine. We just want our kids to try it. That is going to be the most important part, and the most important thing is to get them to try it. And that's what this whole thing is about, getting them in the kitchen to just pique their interest. So I'm going to go through the last few pretty quickly, but the mac and cheese is just, I think it's fun. I think it's a really fun way to get kids. I think most kids like mac and cheese, probably except for my child. I think every kid probably likes mac and cheese. So again, there's so many ways to get your kids involved, but for younger kids especially, it's a great way for them to maybe try new vegetables. And even older kids, they can really make this whole recipe for the most part themselves, obviously with adult supervision and how comfortable you are. But I think it's a great vehicle to get your kids to try some new foods, some new vegetables in particular. I'm always a fan of throwing vegetables in macaroni and cheese. I'm a fan of throwing vegetables into anything, to make it a little bit healthier and to just raise that nutrition profile a little bit. So again, a great way to get your kids involved, and to hopefully get them to pique their interest in maybe trying some new vegetables or anything else that you may be putting into the mac and cheese. So spaghetti and meatballs. So I specifically want to talk about the meatballs because meatballs are such a great thing for kids of all ages to get involved with. And I know it's disgusting because they're touching raw meat and it may make you nauseous. And obviously, we need to make sure that our kids are going to be washing their hands before putting their hands in their mouth. But the fact that you're taking so many different ingredients that have different textures and then they're feeling on their own how it forms a new texture is so, so great for like just developmentally. It's so great. And we really learn to eat through exploring. So what better way than getting in there, feeling textures, learning textures, than meatballs, than raw meat and egg and whatever good stuff's in there. So I think it's a really, really great recipe for kids, again, of all ages. Your younger kids can, again, mix the mixture. Older kids can roll up the meatballs, which is a great skill, a fine motor skill that they can learn and continue to work on. So I love involving kids in the meatball process. And again, I know it may seem really, really daunting as a caregiver, but it's a really great, it's a great food to involve them with, because developmentally there's so much that they can learn from, and hopefully really enjoy as well. And you can also throw in a ton of great like vegetables in there. You can throw in really whatever you want into the meat mixture, or into the sauce. So it's a great way to, again, add some delicious, healthy nutrients into our kids' meals. And then our last one is a healthy ramen noodle. This is almost like a ramen noodle stir fry. And the reason I want to talk about this is because a lot of kids go off to college or go off to living in their own apartments. And like ramen and frozen vegetables are pretty much take over their dorm rooms or their kitchens. So it's first of all, it's great because if these are pretty affordable ingredients. So when they do go off on their own, they're things that you'll find a lot, or reputedly we'll see a lot of the time, we'll see them in dorm rooms and apartments of young college age kids or young adults. And it's just try to make ramen a little bit healthier, right? So we don't have to add all of the flavor, all of that chicken flavor, whatever flavor it is. But we can kind of saute it up with some frozen vegetables. We can add some chicken in there and add some meat in there. And it can really just be a healthy meal, and it's so simple. And it's also a really great way, again, to teach our kids as they get older, to be on the stove, feel comfortable on the stove, using the stove top. And it doesn't take a long time at all to make, which is especially, if you're adding a protein to it, like chicken or meat, it may take a little bit longer. But if you're not and you're just making it with the vegetables and the ramen, it could take pretty short to make. So I definitely, I like this recipe just because I think it's a great practice recipe for older kids who are, about to leave home, and also just to practice, again, our skills on the stove using different cookware and everything of that sort. So that is really it. Before I end and we go to a Q&A, I just want to bring everyone here to discuss, to just show you our website. So we're fairmeals.com. Of course, we are a nonprofit, again, as I mentioned, pending 501c3 status, and we appreciate any and all donations. Donations can be made on fairmeals.com. There is a button to donate. Visit us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, Fair Meals, and that is really it. So definitely, we're happy to take questions if anybody has any questions.
We have one question from Ariella.
Mm-hmm.
She asked, how do you get your child to eat foods that he used to enjoy but refuses to eat now? Will involving them help?
Definitely. And I have seen this firsthand. And I can't say, again, that it's like, he'll definitely eat them again, and love them again, but it may pique his interest to want to try them again. And again, I'm going to repeat this so many times, but that's really what we want. We want them to try them again, and involving them. And especially, as I mentioned, putting an ingredient that they already, that they still love or that they still like, and kind of adding that with these ingredients that you're trying, or the foods that you're trying to get them to eat again. Involving them can, it can be the answer. I'm not saying it 100% is, but I've seen it happen, and I've heard of it happen. So it's definitely worth a try.
I think also don't panic, right? Like that's a very normal thing
Yes.
to happen. But if it's your first kid, maybe, if you haven't been through it before, it can feel like, oh no, they're never going to try this again.
Yeah.
But they do
And
eventually, I think, get into those
yeah.
foods that they once loved.
Yeah, a lot of the times they do. A lot of the times also as they get older, the textures become weird for them. A lot of the time it is really a texture thing of why they won't like it, or they one time had a bad experience with that food. So just trying to create like a positive experience around it, especially if it is because of a bad experience, then that's going to be, great. If for some reason it is a texture thing, sometimes they just need to grow out of that and you need to just give them time and be patient. And as frustrating as that is, I completely understand. It's worth just waiting and continue to try to expose them.
Let's see. It looks like we got another question. Do you recommend we make these recipes and serve it right away, or should we make a few servings and introduce them at later dates?
No, I would serve it right away. I mean, kids don't remember from one day to the next. So, if we say to our kids, "Oh, we're going to make this now and eat it tomorrow," they may not remember A, that they're going to eat it tomorrow, or B, that they made it the day before, depending on how old they are. So definitely you want them to eat it right away. Obviously, if you're preparing dinner and you're the type of person that wants to prepare in the morning and you're going to have it for dinner at night, that's probably fine. It's still within the same day. But I would probably recommend serving it as soon as possible after.
Does anyone else have any questions? All right.
Okay. Well, thank you guys all for attending and for coming. I really appreciate it. And again, we will send out a newsletter. This video will be recorded and put up on our website in a few weeks. And we do have some more, we do have another webinar coming up next month. It's on April 21st. I believe it's a Wednesday night. We will be talking about how to make healthier alternatives or healthier options when we're stuck in going into a corner store and we don't have an abundance of available to us of healthy options. So if we have two things that may both seem unhealthy, what are some things we should look at to see to make the healthier choice? So that's coming up on April 21st. So look out for that in the newsletter, and also when we do put up the registration link for that. And again, I really thank you all for being here. And please feel free to email me if you didn't have a question now and later you think of a question. Feel free to email me. My email is, I don't even know if it says it on this contact info, but it is info@fairmeals.com. And I check it very frequently. So please feel free to email any questions that you have.
Thank you for everything, Arielle. This was so informative. As a toddler
Thank
mom, I can
you.
say I'm really looking forward to making some of these meals myself.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Laura, for moderating and for being here and for your insights as well as a mom of two. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.